Hello and welcome to Classes Online with Yoga Cheryl. Today we'll be working on a gentle seated twisting sequence that will incorporate some restorative postures as well as seated twists. You'll need a few different props today, one blanket, one bolster. We'll also need a chair or a sofa and a block for later in the practice. So let's get started. We're going to start out with a restorative side bend. And I've got the props already set up for the pose. So you'll need one bolster. If you don't have a bolster, you can take a rolled up towel or a rolled up blanket and use it in place of the bolster. And then you'll also need a blanket. And the blanket, I've got it folded sort of in quarters here, but it might even need to be folded a little bit more. This is going to be a head support, so once you lay down, you can determine exactly how high that needs to be. So to come into the supported side bend, we want the bolster to be right at the side of the chest. So not down in the waist and not all the way up on the armpit, but somewhere under the rib cage. I'm going to lay down on my right side. My right arm is going to come between the two props, and the head is going to come down on the bolster. And I can already tell that this is a little low for me, so I'm going to just double this over to make the pillow a bit more high, more comfortable there for my shoulder. There's a couple of ways that you can support the legs. One is just to keep the legs like they are, to keep them bent. This is probably the easiest way. The second way would be to straighten the top leg out, and I've got my chair down here, but just either straight out this way, or you can use a support, a block, a bolster, a blanket, something underneath the inner part of the thigh or leg to keep that a little bit more supported in case there's any hip pain. That's one choice. The other choice would be to straighten out the bottom leg and step the front foot and top foot in front of the bottom knee. This is more of an opening on the hip. Now the arm, we're going to take over the head, so there's a couple of choices here as well. Reach the arm forward, go all the way up and over your ear. The arm can be straight or the arm can be bent and relaxed, either one. So get settled into the position. What we want is an opening from the armpit all the way down to the hip. And allow the breath to come into the side of the chest. So we do this restorative side bend first to create space between the vertebrae, space between all the ribs. This is a part of the body that tends to be pretty compressed because our typical posture is standing with or sitting with the arms by the sides. We don't usually get a lot of space or breath into this area of the side upper chest. So just breathing in, feeling the expansion. Breathing out, feeling the release. And then rebend both of the knees, stack them together. Relax the arm down in front of the chest, placing the hand on the bolster and pushing the body up to a seated position. And then we switch sides. At home, all you need to do is turn around, but I want to keep facing you guys, so I'm going to move my props to the opposite side. So blanket and bolster. Try to have it in the same area of the chest. Arm goes through. Support under the head. Arm position is going to go up and over the ear. And you can keep it straight reaching, or you can bend the elbow. Bottom leg, I had the bottom leg straightened. Top leg acts as a kickstand, opening up through the hip. And here we're breathing into this whole right side of the chest. Trying to make some space between the ribs. Trying to open the space in that lung. And then stacking the knees, relaxing the arm down in front of the chest, and pushing the torso back up to a seated position. And then I'm just going to move the props to the side. We'll use them in a minute. Lay down on the back. And come into a reclining twist. And in fact, we do need one prop. I've got my block over here. I'll use it. You can use a block, you can use a blanket, or you can use your bolster for this next reclining twist. So the idea here is that my shoulders are going to stay in contact with the mat the whole time. And you could just experiment for a moment to see the difference between these two setups for taking the knees down to the floor. So one would be just to let the arms reach out, and I'm running into my wall here, but you would preferably have the arms straight out. If I let my knees just, feet stay on the floor and my legs fall to the side, just notice how that feels in your spine. And I'm feeling a lot of pull in my lower back that doesn't feel all that comfortable to me. So that's one way to do it. The preferred way, I'm gonna come back, is to actually, if I'm taking my legs to the left, I'm gonna shift my hips to the right. So you're shifting your hips the opposite direction first. So come up into a baby bridge, swing the hips to the right, lay them back down. My right hip is the only part of my pelvis that's on the floor. My left hip is actually kind of angled up. Then the knees are going to come all the way into the chest, and then I'm going to support the lower leg on the prop. I'm going to turn this onto the second height. So this is much more comfortable. It feels like it's a truer rotation of my lower spine as opposed to sort of this angled rotation. Reaching back through the opposite arm, maybe turning the head to the right. Knees to the left, head to the right. This left hand can also sit on top of the leg for added support. So just noticing how the shoulders stay relatively open. The chest is parallel to the floor here, but the pelvis and lower back are rotating. So relaxing into the belly, relaxing into the back ribs. As you breathe, notice how the breath filters easily into the right side of the abdomen. Breathing in, breathing out. And then lifting up the top knee and the bottom knee, feet to the floor. You've gone a little cockeyed on the mat, so scoot yourself into the center. Find your support, bring it to the opposite side. Shift your pelvis away from that support, knees to chest, left arm down, right leg to the block or bolster or whatever prop you're using. knees stacked, holding the top leg with the right hand. And for our first twist today, just noticing if one side feels different or harder than the other side. We tend to have this ability to twist a little bit differently to the right compared than to the left, especially if you have any scoliosis going on, which I do have. So one side feels very easy to me, and this side is actually my more challenging side. So just noticing those things. I'm not trying to fix it right now. Honoring those differences. So if it is a really challenging side, you may even want to put something between the knees to alleviate pressure on the SI joint. Breath coming into the belly, side of the belly that's facing upward toward the ceiling. And then inhaling the top leg, the bottom leg, feet down, hips shift into the center. And then let's turn to the side and sit up. Finding a blanket. I'm going to move the block. Actually, it's behind me. You can stay back there. So I'm going to take my blanket now and fold it lengthwise into a long fold. So it looks like this. I'm going to sit on this folded side. And sit for Bharadvajasana, which is our kind of our peak pose today. This is the one that we're going to work on, as well as one more seated position. So if I sit with my feet stacked to the left side of my body and my knees pretty much straight out from my hips, I feel like I'm kind of leaning over to the right. So if you cannot sit this way without using your hand to hold yourself up, another choice, and I'm sitting on a blanket under both of my sit bones, another choice would be to bring the blanket under only the right sit bone. So I'm just going to shift to show you that. So it's under my right thigh and my right sit bone, but my left sit bone is actually hanging off the edge. And you can see already that this shifts the whole torso back up more towards the center. So either one side or having the blanket under both sides. So for Bharadvajasana, the idea here is that this is an open twist and that we're going to be turning away from the leg. We're not using the arm or the leg to pull into the body. We'll do that in a moment. So we want to try to stay long. That's one of the key factors in twisting, is that the sides of the waist stay long. You don't want to turn and crunch down into the spine or into the rib cage. So using your right hand, or back hand in this case, as a support, you're going to press down into the floor right beside your hip. If there's a blanket there, that's fine. And then lift the left arm straight up. So create as much length as you can along the left side of the body, dropping that left hip slightly towards the floor. So take a nice deep breath in. And then as you exhale, start to turn the navel to the right, away from the feet. Let the left arm come down to the outside of the right thigh and just hook it there. Keep lifting and turning the body as you're exhaling. So on the inhales, you can get a little bit taller. On the exhales, you're turning the belly, the ribs, and the head. When you've gone as far as you comfortably can go, you can choose to stay here or let the head turn back and look slightly down over your shoulder towards your knee. So you're getting a counter twist in the cervical spine or neck. Keep lifting and spinning the belly up and to the right. Try to relax the upper back. Try not to do too much of a back bend, nor have too much of a leaning position. The tendency is to lean to the right. We want to stay head on top of tailbone. Take another breath in and out. Then inhale and start to lift. And on the exhale, come back to the center so that you're back in your starting position. And just notice how it feels to come out of that twist. Twists are often a little bit heat producing, So you feel sort of a flushing sensation that's coming up through the core of the body. So we're going to switch sides now. I'm going to shift my blanket, check out what I need on the second side. I might not need it in the same position. Swing the feet over. Again, you're stacking the curve of your arch against the curve of your inner calf, inner ankle area, and just check in. Do you need this under both sit bones? This side's actually okay for both sit bones. Or you would shift it under just the front leg. Okay, so either one, or nothing. Back hand, left hand up against the body, close to your hips so that you can help yourself sit up tall. Right arm is going to reach straight up as you sit the right hip to the floor. Take a deep breath in, and on the exhalation, turn the belly. Let the arm come down. Inhale again, get tall. Exhale, turn the ribs. I'm using my oblique muscles to turn my torso, and then turning the neck at the end. So again, choosing to stay in the full twist or counter twisting cervical spine back to the right, dropping the right shoulder, right chin towards the right shoulder. And breathing here. So like our reclining twist, you might notice there's a sense of openness in the breath in the left abdomen. Right side feels a bit more compressed. And then inhaling, get tall, and exhale, rotate back to the front. Bring the feet back in front of you as well. And this time we're going to turn to the right into Ardha Matsyendrasana, or half lord of the fish's posture. So with this pose, the left leg sits in a cross-legged position. The right leg, you're going to step the foot in front of the left ankle. Now, if your feet are really close to your body, you might feel like it makes you lean back. So have the feet far enough forward that you can sit comfortably and feel like your spine is elongating. You've got some natural curve of the lower back. So use the hands clasped around the front shin to lift yourself up. You've got pressure between the right side of the abdomen and the thigh, and that's a good thing. We want that pressure to stay there. So take another breath in. We're going to take the left hand to the front of the shin, bring the right hand behind the back again, and start to turn toward the leg. So the pressure is intensifying. Now this arm position is typically not that comfortable to maintain, so you can bring your forearm or your elbow in front of the knee as you turn. Now you might see pictures of people in this position with their arm to the outside. This actually is not such a recommended position for most of us. It creates way too much compression in the shoulder and the chest. Having the arm more wrapped around, hooked around, is much safer. So here as well, you can continue with the turn, rotation to the right, all the way through the spine, or you can use the head and turn the other way and look down. It's your choice. This does give a little bit of a trapezius stretch, sort of the upper back area. So if that part of the body is tight for you, the counter twist might be preferred. Make sure that this whole foot stays down on the mat. Taking a few more breaths. Stay tall throughout the spine. And then inhale. And on the exhale, releasing back to the front. And just let the leg sit down in a cross-legged position so it alleviates the pressure on the belly. And notice how it feels. And then coming into the second side. So I'm going to switch my legs. My right leg sits in a cross-legged version. The left foot steps down in front of the right ankle. Again, I've got enough space to sit up tall. I'm going to clasp my hands here, draw my belly up against my thigh. My right hand now comes to my left shin. My left hand comes beside me or behind me on the floor. This is just used as like a kickstand to keep the chest nice and open. So inhale tall. Exhale, belly turns into the thigh. Resist the urge to yank and pull. This will create a lot of tension in this upper back. So I like to use my arm rather than my hand. It's just holding very gently and turning, turning, turning belly to top of head. And again, you can stay here or counter twist the cervical spine and look down. Continue to draw the belly to the left. Continue to breathe. And then inhale, sit up, and exhale to release. Come back to a cross-legged position with both legs. All right. So coming back down to the floor after our 2 seated twists, we're going to do one more reclining twist. And this is a restorative version of Bharadvajasana, or Supta Bharadvajasana. So we will need our bolster again and perhaps the blanket. So let me set that up for us now. The blanket, I'm going to unfold it and fold it the other direction. So this gives us a little bit more space to work with. This way. You could also have it opened up to this position. We'll see which one works better. And then the bolster is going to go parallel to the sticky mat. So it's going to look like this. Now, depending on the size of your bolsters, this is a pretty small bolster. If you have a really big bolster, you might need to have this blanket as something to sit on top of. Since my bolster is small, I'm going to use the larger shape. This creates some padding for the hip, and it also makes this distance between the floor and the bolster edge not quite so high. I want to place my right hip completely up against the edge of the bolster. My legs are back in that Bharadvajasana stack like we had before. The idea with this pose is that I want to turn toward the bolster as much as I can before I start to lay on it. Hopefully we're going to get the sternum on the bolster. Now that, I might not be able to turn that far, so I'll show you a trick. So one hand goes behind, my right hand, and my left hand comes in front. My left hip is going to come off the ground. So I lift and I turn, and then I just see, okay, my sternum line is actually not facing this bolster. It's kind of facing the edge of my sticky mat. So instead of me lying down and forcing myself to be in a deeper twist than I really can be, I'm going to take the head of the bolster and just angle it slightly so that it lines up with my sternum. So as I lie down, I'd like to get my belly as far along that bolster as possible to lengthen the lower back. So I'm lifting the belly up. I'm going to lean forward, get my forearms down, and then maybe shift my right hip slightly back a little bit away from the bolster's edge, and then let the hands come here to the floor with the head turned. I'm going to take my glasses off so that I can do this. Head turned to the side. If you want to have the face turned down, please put your hands under your forehead so that you can still breathe. You can also do a full twist, which would be to turn the head to the right, only if that does not create pain in the neck or upper back. So as much as you can, relax into this position, breathing into the left side body and back body. You want to stay here for maybe 2 minutes at the most. There are lots of different leg positions that you can choose. The top leg can be more straight, if that's better. You can also put something under it. The bottom leg could be more straight out to the front. So finding whatever leg's positions work the best. Feeling the pressure up against the right side of the belly. Feeling the breath in the back of the body. Taking about 3 more breaths here. Slide your hands under your chest. Inhale, push yourself up to a seated position. Now for me to switch sides, I'm going to move the bolster back to the center where it was. I'm just going to turn my body around the other direction. So my knees and my feet swing around. My left hip touches the bolster's edge. My left arm comes to the outside of the bolster. I'm going to lengthen up and turn, noticing again where my sternum is lined up sort of toward the corner of my sticky mat. The end of the bolster, I'm going to turn that direction, lengthen out over the bolster as I lie down, and shifting this bottom hip just slightly back just so that it's comfortable. And then turning the head into the full twist, or into the center, or to the right. Now for me, this is the harder side. So I may turn my head to the opposite side to alleviate some of that pressure. Finding the breath in the back, especially the right side of the back. And then take about 3 more breaths. Hands are going to come under the shoulders. On the inhale, push yourself up. And then you're going to move the props. Get the blanket ready for our last pose. We've got 2 more poses, but while I've got the props in my hand, I'm just going to move the blanket up onto the seat of this chair. And then we'll do a little bridge to release the spine after that. And I'm going to show you a sort of a different way that you can work with bridge pose. So typically the bridge pose is done with the block under the hips, so that there's just one support right on the sacrum. And that's perfectly fine. It creates some traction for the lumbar spine, but it doesn't really encourage a neutral curve. So there's another way that you can do bridge pose, slightly different. Especially with small bolsters or a folded blanket here. You'll lay back over a bolster and then put the block under your sacrum. So this creates this nice neutral spinal curve in the low back. It's a bit more supportive. After all the twisting, which puts a tremendous amount of pressure on the abdominal organs, and that's one of the reasons that twisting is so good for us, is it does squeeze and release pressure in the belly, which helps to maintain our peristaltic action for our digestive system. It also acts to wring out the muscles along the spine and creates pressure and release on the kidneys and all of the abdominal organs. But after that, we need to create some openness and some relaxation here. So we're just going to rest for a minute or 2 in this open bridge and really feel the belly relaxed and expanded. So as you're inhaling, the belly should really feel like it can inflate, and as you exhale, just feel the belly empty and relax. Good. Now to come out of this pose, pick up the hips, remove the block, and then carefully roll to the side and come up. All right. For our last pose, bringing the chair closer. Notice the chair is backwards. This is a yoga chair where the opening is here underneath the bar. It's backwards because there's a slight angle of the seat. If you're using a couch chair or a kitchen chair or something like that, don't worry about it being backwards because you won't be able to get your legs through the back. You can just be forwards, but maybe adding a little bit of a roll for the ankles so that they're slightly higher than the knees. This will help with your circulation. So this is instant Maui, or legs in the chair, and I'll show both. I'm going to get pretty close to the chair, lay on the back without a pillow under my head. Calves are on the seat of the chair. My ankles are on that little roll. So this is a perfectly comfortable position. You want the back of the chair to be right in the back of the knee. If you have high blood pressure or glaucoma or any other condition that inversions are contraindicated for, I would just stay in this kind of a position without the pelvis elevated. If you do want to have a little bit more of an inversion, you can bend your knees slightly, pick up the hips, and go back under the block, under the hips with the block. So this creates a little bit more of a ramp idea and an inversion for the body. Hips are elevated slightly above the heart, and heart is elevated slightly above the head. So continue to rest here and breathe, allowing the body to absorb all the benefits of the twisted practice. And to come out of this posture, take a deep breath in, a relaxed breath out. Begin to wiggle the fingers and the toes. Bring the feet to the front edge of the chair. Press down as you lift up through the hips, taking the block out from under. Land the pelvis on the floor. Roll to the side. Using the strength of your arms, push yourself up to a seated position. Thank you for practicing with me today. Let's bring hands to the heart. Namaste.